So yeah, I'm an 80s kid, and I was born here in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, and that's where I reside now, but I've been many different places between birth and now. Currently living here with my beautiful wife. We've been together 14 years and married 11. And we've got 3 beautiful children together. So their ages 10, 6 and 3. So, and yeah, just like what you said, community man and church man, and yeah, and I'm just honoured to be on here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, definitely. Well, we're privileged to have you on the show, and you know what's been really clear, especially coming through social media, the business that I work in, and then just friends and family, just in general, having those conversations, is that whole aspect of mental wellness, emotional well-being, and that spiritual awareness. And you're perfect because everybody is struggling. And with this show, Aroha Tāne, obviously we are focusing on men. Obviously, we're not going to limit it to just males, but it's really important because why I started the show initially was through the first lockdown last year from March 2020. I had a lot of my male friends contacting me through Messenger, you know, expressing their feelings, their concerns, and just their emotional mental wellness around different aspects of how COVID's actually affecting them. And fast forward to now, it's just even more prevalent in 2021 that it's still going. COVID's not going away. So a perfect platform, a safe platform to be able to have those discussions. So yeah, I know you're a really good friend of Poe, and actually Poe, I'm going to hand you over to say some amazing words about Shannon.
Oh, wow. Where do I start with this guy, man? Far up. I remember when you were but a spring chicken back in Rotorua. When I was living in Rotorua, and we were going to Charisma Church, and this is long before you ended up with Destiny, and I ended up overseas, and like I could see the giftings then. Just the way that you carried yourself, a really eloquent speaker back then, and that's just grown in an exponential bell curve. And then I remember you being really good at sports as well, but really always whānau and community minded, and that translated into what you're doing now. And then the music, like, which is what we had in common, which is the major thing that we had in common. And the king that we serve, you call him Jesus, and I still call him Jesus, but I've sort of switched over to the Hebrew name, Yehoshua HaMashiach, but it's the same person. So yeah, real privilege to have you on the show, my bro, and yeah, looking forward to tucking into what I like to call some momentum, just to see what your momentum rushes are, and what your wife's are, and just all of that good stuff, that kingdom stuff.
Cool, man. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, bumping into you guys in their gym a couple of months ago was buzzy, you know, so and awesome to see that you've got a beautiful little whānau with you now, bro, and you're both looking really happy, and we live basically in the same neighborhood again, you know, so God's good, you know.
Amen.
We connect us again. Yeah.
Yep.
And I always say that we're always put in front of us for a reason. There's always a purpose behind it, whether we understand or know what the purpose is. That's where the journey actually will then take you. And I think for yourself, Paul's spoken so highly of you, and hence why you are on the show. And I'm going to keep saying the kind words. But talk us through a bit about, you know, your journey around mental wellness and emotional well-being, and how you've found that, especially during the light and the awakening of what's happening with COVID.
Yeah. So my parents broke up when I was about 6 years old, but I was thankful that my father still stayed in contact with me. But I was raised up in Australia, Manly, right by the beach. We were living a good life, and then for whatever reason, my parents decided to separate. And for a young boy, I don't know what it is for girls, but for a young boy, that's pretty devastating, losing your dad. And he ended up passing away when I was about 18, which was probably one of the worst days of my life because we were still pretty close, you know. And for me, I've always been a big believer in no disrespect to mums, like mums, we definitely need them. They give nurture, they give love, they show us all that aroha. But for me, I needed a dad to give me identity. And that was something I kind of lost in that young adult life. So not having him around, I was a bit floundering for a couple of years. And then Poe mentioned I've joined Destiny. So there I was able to find some more father figures, and just through that and being married and having children and trying to right the wrongs that maybe my parents innocently made those mistakes, and I've tried to learn from those mistakes and be better. And yeah, I don't really know how to land the plane here, but for me, I just had to let go of all the wrongs that happened to me when I was young and make sure that I'm doing them right for my kids, you know, and stopping whatever the bad stuff that was coming through for me, and making sure that I was being a good husband and a good father, and that after me, everything is all good for those that come after me. But yeah, you're right about people are struggling, eh? People are struggling.
Yeah.
And men, we've never really been good at talking, men. So it's awesome having a platform like this one here, Aroha Tāne, so that men can maybe open up a bit more. There's other programs out there too, like Man Up and all those kind of things that encourage men to maybe just dig a bit deeper into their life and their feelings and open up a bit more. Because I don't know what the updated statistics are for suicide, but they've never looked really good for men. And if we can do anything to make a little change to that, that would be awesome. You know, so, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's a little bit of kōrero coming off the top of my mind at the moment.
Yeah, now we talk about all the time the importance within the child's first 7 years of their life, and what's been prevalent through the discussions we've had over our shows is the reason why a lot of children and now adults do what they do and are who they are and the journey they've undertaken has come down to an aspect of their first 7 years. So, you know, the point that you're making about having your dad but losing him at a young age will have an effect. And, you know, coming through Destiny, you would have mentored a few males, you know, that were in the similar boat. You know, what sort of advice can you pass on to, you know, some of our viewers around if you were in that situation, how to move forward?
Yeah, my advice is always pretty simple. I usually like to keep things simple. If I'm talking to a young man, I'll always tell him, you know, you got what it takes. Because I think for young men, a lot of times, the ones that I've dealt with anyway, they felt inadequate, you know, that they weren't able to achieve what they were set out to achieve. And any young lady or wahine that my wife and I would help, the advice is you're worth it, you know. So kind of the same kōrero between the two, but different at the same time. So for young men, you've got what it takes. And for young ladies, you're worth it, you know. So and you're valued. I kind of look at it like for young men, they'll learn how to treat a woman based on how their father would treat their mum, you know, and a lady would know how to be treated based on how their father treated their mum or treated them, or so. So yeah, that's basically the short advice I'd give people. It really depends on what they're going through. There's always different kind of kōrero you can go through with them.
I'm reading a book at the moment by Matt Brown, and on the shows I referenced him prior. And a part of one of his chapters was about, and I can't remember for the life of me the title of the chapter, but it was in reference to his mum and also his dad. But the way that he was brought up to treat women was the way that he saw how his father treated his mother. So, you know, you're making an amazing claim, because obviously you are what you see, and then you obviously put that into action. So that's a really a great point that you just raised.
Yeah, and just further on that, like when I was coming up as a young guy, you know, with Poe and some other awesomely talented people that were around, you kind of just become who you hang with, you know, you become those people. Your environment plays a big part. I know that's not 100% true all the time. Some people have some horrific background that still turn out to be really successful people, but just from experience, what you're saying is bang on, you know.
I hope this fella of TC Creative Poe didn't lead you astray.
Leave me ashamed. Poe was always he was always a very grandiose thinker, you know. So most of the talent that were in our pool of talent would maybe think this level, this is where they want to aim. And the thing that was different about Poe, he was always thinking of something like a normal person would think, bro, that's crazy. What do you maybe just take a step back a little bit? But I always admired that about Poe, because it's not natural for a Kiwi to think that high, you know. So I always thought that was cool. Like he was always because he was a rapper back in the day, he still is, and he was always incorporating kōrero Māori into his raps, and that wasn't really done back then. People were trying to be the same as America, so I really admired that. Whether he led me astray or not, I might have to keep that a secret.
You can send a message to me later. Call me in with all the details, Shannon.
Yeah, I will.
And you know, talking in the gym those couple of months ago. Gosh, I can't believe it's been a couple of months. You alluded to the fact that you know, you were actually a music artist yourself back then with Poe, but also through Destiny's Church. So you want to tell us
about that?
Yeah, fill us in. Tell us.
Yeah, cool. So back in the day, well, I never really had a singing voice, but I enjoyed playing the drums and I enjoyed rapping. So back when, so this is maybe mid-90s, early 90s.
Dope rapper, that just, you're a dope rapper. In my books, man, from what I've seen, your rhythmic skills, your pentametric skills, your syncopation, dope, bro.
Oh, mean, thank you. Yeah, so I kind of stopped rapping maybe over nearly 20 years ago, but I carried on with the drumming side of things. And then I found probably my biggest strength is helping to make people around me better. I never really knew that when I was 16, 15, 17. I never knew that side. But when I think back, I remember I used to be massive at lifting other people's gifts up. And for whatever reason, when they were around me, they would always be better than maybe when they weren't around me. So that's where the whole directing, my wife and I are directors for music at Destiny. There's a drum cymbal company in Australia called Red Cymbals. I became their very first worship artist.
Amazing.
So that was just last year. And yeah, we just do whatever we can to make people better. So we have people that come in with awesome talent, and our job is to just help build on that and develop that. And now we got one girl that we helped develop when she was as young as 13. She's 18 now, and she's off to Dubai in the new year to pursue her career in singing. So yeah, so it's not all credit to us, but we definitely played a massive part in that. And we've always been big believers that, you know, talent can get you a certain distance, but your character is the one that takes it all the way. So we're massive on, okay, if you're going to be awesomely talented, make sure you're still a good person at the same time. Because what I've seen in the music industry of some people with some really broken behaviors and broken personalities and just broken. Yeah, so yeah, I played drums full time, 2017 to 2019. Was a session drummer for a good 4 or 5 years. Was able to be blessed enough to tour the country and play drums, and but I found at the end of the day, God gave me the talent and gave me the gift. Nothing satisfied me as much as playing in that space, in that worship space, and that I got to play in massive places and stages, and it was just never really enough, you know. So now I'm back home doing what I love and really, really happy about it. And probably the last thing I want to say, we've got a group called August Arts. My wife and I decided to start, and it's just a community group of collective artists just using their gifts to bless people and bless God. We just released our first single in June this year, and really good response for our first time single. So
Pretty good.
so yeah, that's
I've listened to it a few times, and yeah, whoever wrote that, I don't know if it was a company of writers or one person, and obviously the attributing elements like the drum.
Yeah, so it was written by my wife and I, basically from top to bottom. But the music side of things, you can hear all the guitars and all that stuff. Our producer added all that in, so there's a little bit of a teamwork between us and our producer, and our awesomely talented people came in and added their voices and stuff. So yeah, it was a success.
And was that the name of it? Was it The Greatest?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and it was written as a response to the whole COVID pandemic. That you know, with all the madness and all the chaos, at the end of the day, there's still one thing that remains, and it's God. You know, so and what's one of the lyric lines? Once again, in this. Oh no, sorry. Through the storm, and oh shucks, I've gone blank. I've gone blank. I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it. Yeah.
And it's awesome that you're talking about this, as I mentioned before, referencing COVID. So tell us the purpose and the reason. Obviously, it was because of COVID, but use the lyrics to kind of give us a real great insight into how the lyrics and your album and your singles can help others to draw some form of relief and just a way to get through these hard times at the minute.
Yeah. The times are really uncertain, which makes people really anxious. And anxiety is a killer, man. It can be a root of a lot of different emotions that lead to bad outcomes. So we wrote the song to say that, you know, some people use medication to get through. Some people use alcohol and drugs to get through. Some people use social media to get through, but none of it will be as powerful as having Christ in your life and God in your life. And for us, we always knew that in any situation, God will always see it through. I don't really like to look into things too much, but at the same time, I know that everything happens for a reason. And we don't, it depends on who you are, but for me, I know there's a natural side. I can see with my eyes, hear with my ears, taste with my mouth, feel with my hands. But there's also a spiritual side as well. And we just trying to connect people to that element of life. Because sometimes when you just focus on the natural things, it doesn't really cut through enough. You've got to dig it a little bit deeper. So for us, the foundation of everything was to use God and to use Christ to lead us through these situations. So, yeah, that's basically why we were at this.
Tizzy Creed and I have this conversation quite often about seeing in your natural eyes and then using your spiritual eyes, because ultimately, for a lot of people, we senses play a massive part in the way that we live, the way that we operate, how we live our day-to-day lives. And on a lot of our other shows, we talk about how to actually become in tune with our senses and how to use them more so to direct us through our day-to-day lives. So, for us from that spiritual perspective, what are maybe some things that you can suggest that others can do that maybe, they're not fully understanding what that spiritual side looks like? Is there anything that you can do to make suggestions? I know TZ Created, you talk about meditation and prayer quite a lot.
Yeah, so I think what actually touching on is because I look through all Holy Scripture, and I also look into books like the Book of Joshua. People oh, why are you reading that book? Because it's written, the exploits of Joshua are written in that, and it's actually referenced in Joshua 10:13. And anybody who knows Scripture knows that. And then you go to the Book of Jude, and it talks about Enoch and the watchers. And then when you actually start to understand, you go to a scripture like Ephesians 6:12, and you would know that scripture well. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And so, because scripture, and we know it intimately, it's easy to look past the people because we're looking at spiritual entities that are influencing them, and that's what's going on in the world. And so one of the major reasons why I'm on this show is to teach people this spiritual knowledge, which is absolutely imperative to how we should perceive the world, because it's not actually people who are impeding us. It's spiritual entities that are influencing people to impede us. But because we can't see them, or we look at as the people, but as spiritually mature men, it's us. It's easy for us to perceive past that, and so that's how it makes it easier for us to mentor young rangatahi and young men and even young women, because you see their circumstances, but you know what causes those circumstances, and so it's easy just to go to Daniel. Or to look at 1 Kings and 2 Kings, and look at Elijah and look at Elisha, and how they can themselves, and how Elisha actually saw the other side when he was in his room, and he could see chariots of fire and the angelic hosts of heaven coming down to surround the enemy who had surrounded the city that he was in, and then his servant couldn't see them, and so he asked God to open his eyes so he could see them, and ultimately, that's what I'm trying to teach people to do. But I mean, there's levels to it, eh? There's levels to holiness. There's levels to obedience, and the higher you get, and I'm just going to be real about this. I'm obedient for probably about 99.9% of the stuff, but I've got a foul mouth when I get frustrated, and I just keep it real like that, When I'm in the office at home and I'm trying to coordinate all for my business, for Amazon, for music, and what have you. I let a few F-bombs fly, and at the end of the day, I ask God for forgiveness. And we've lost camera view there, Varric, but I'm sure you get it. We can hear you though.
I mean, the crazy thing is, people are more spiritual than they realize, because our our spirit doesn't need as much training as our natural bodies. It's because it's always alive, it's always there, and especially as Māori, like Māori are some of the most spiritual people in the world, you know. Just so if for those people who maybe aren't too much in tune with the spiritual side, there's a thing called a hunch. Sometimes when something happens and you get a little bit of a hunch, it's not something you can taste or hear or smell, but you can kind of just feel it and hear. Let's say, for example, a girl was walking the street and she sees a guy that might seem a bit creepy. She gets that little hunch, you know. So this is a real basic level example of what I'm trying to say, but if they can learn to listen to that feeling or that inkling more, it might help them to become a bit more spiritual. But then these things like what Poe says as well, prayer and digging into the word and, you know, all that kind of stuff as well, that will help strengthen your inner man. But at basic level, like we feel those hunches every day, you know. We feel that our kids are going to touch the oven and we don't even know that they're in the kitchen. We can just kind of feel that, like, oh, it's quiet. Why is it quiet? My kids must be up to something, you know. So we get those hunches. Yeah. But you were spot on, my bro.
Unctions, is what Holy Scripture calls
it. Yeah.
And I want to go back to your gifts, and hopefully we're going to get a view of you shortly. We want to see your handsome face. I'm not sure why it's gone black. But going back to your gift, and you were telling us previous about you love, you know, you play the drums, obviously music.
Yeah.
How have you been able to use, you know, your talents and your gifts to help through those tough times, especially during COVID last year and maybe this year?
Yeah. So I don't know. Music has a beautiful ability to just hit the heart. You know what I mean? Like I think in most cases, people would prefer to listen to a message through music. It's a language that everyone can understand.
Yep.
And I've been trying my best lately not to be so deliberate with the words. Like I've linked that some of the best songs in the world, they'll just tell a story, you know, like how parables are in the Bible.
Yep.
And you kind of make up your own interpretation of that story, like it connects to you in some way. And then this other person who's listening to the same song, it connects to them another way.
Yep.
So it's personable to everybody. So yeah, for me, that's where I try to go with our music. And then there's other times where, especially like where the government's taking us now, music's probably going to be a bit more direct.
Yep.
And you know what I mean, where the message just has to be straight up the guts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the beautiful thing about music. You can kind of take it on any angle, and it can touch all sorts of people. Even the most unmusical person can get some kind of feeling out of music, which is beautiful about that medium. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
And tell us about the business that you and your wife have started, because you said you were, is it a directors at Destiny? So, you know, how do you use that scope and that platform and that space within the church to help people to kind of, I don't know, find their gifts or their passions or just to help in general and support?
Yeah, for those who do have are you asking me how do we get people involved and using their gifts for that, or?
Yeah, definitely. And then how do you nurture them?
Yeah, cool. So some people, their gifts are really obvious. Like you can tell, yeah, this person's a good singer. Then other people, you think they've got rhythmic flow, but they don't know how to use it on an instrument. But they might be beautiful on the lighting or putting the lyrics up on the screen or something. They've just got this way of pushing their gifts through a different format. So our two lighting people are actually really musically talented, but it comes out best when they're on lights because they know how to create atmosphere. And a lot of people who think they can do lights, they don't understand atmosphere well. And that's basically what light is, light is life, eh? So one way we help developers to find what their true gift is. They might have come in thinking that they're going to be a singer and ended up being on the guitar because they're actually stronger on the guitar and they didn't know that until they met us. The other ways, it's just the normal generic ways on making them train on their craft. And it's like going to the gym every day. Oh, you guys know what it's like. You're both really healthy people. You don't get the body that you both have by not exercising. You know what I mean? So you've got to put the work in to better your craft. And then the majority of it comes from just finding inspiration. So for me, especially in this COVID time where we can't actually practice with each other and we can't go to the practice room because we're locked in our houses, and we've had to teach our guys to look for inspiration on YouTube tutorials or something like that. So, hey, darling, who's there?
Hey, tell Uncle Shannon to put his camera back on. Bro.
Is the camera gone?
Yeah.
Your camera has been off for the last 10 minutes, my bro.
Oh, sorry, man.
All good.
How do I?
It's actually probably been a little bit better in terms of like actually focusing in on what you're saying as opposed to being distracted by what we're seeing,
Okay, I'll try this again. Is that working?
No.
You gotta love technology. It happens to me every time I do a show, so I totally understand.
Yeah, praise Yahuwah. He's blessed me with a gift for technology. So.
Yeah, I'll try one time. So I'll turn my camera off, and now I'm going to turn it back on.
All good.
Nothing?
Nah.
No, but that's okay.
It's all good. We'll just carry on.
That's all good. No problem.
Oh,
Hey, there we go.
Sweet.
Kia ora. Yeah, actually, I like the point you were making about, like referencing the gym. In order for you to get a certain way or look, you've got to do the work, put the work in. And you were talking about your gifts and the talents with your students and your people coming through. You've got to continually practice. But it's also about finding those avenues and those platforms where you can't come together as a group, because I think that's what's also hard. And I was talking to a lot of my female, staff members and saying a lot. We were holding calls like this, and we would have all of our store managers, part-timers, regional managers on a call, and they were all talking about wanting to get back in to spend time with their friends and their family and go back to socializing. And a big part of us being humans is that we were never created to be isolated and actually put into almost a cage, if that's the way that you want to look at it. Hence what's happening now with COVID. And we were brought up to be surrounded by whānau and friends and just people in general. And a lot of people, my women were telling me, they just want to go and get out of the house and just walk down the street and just say hello to everybody that's literally coming their way.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Especially Kiwis, we're really, rangatanga is a big thing, so
Definitely.
Connecting with each other is massive. So it has been hard for our team, and we've only been able to get back together a couple of times over the last few months, which has really sucked. So even just visually trying to get together on Zoom or whatever can help a little bit. But one challenge I always left them, I says, look, the next time we all see each other, we all need to be surprised at something that's better about each other. Like on your instruments. Like we should be able to impress each other a bit more the next time we see each other, because we've been working on ourselves, eh? So yeah, but it sucks not catching up with everyone, eh? So,
And everyone needs hope. I think that's what's going to help people get through the trials and tribulations and the struggles, is that it's having hope. And you were talking about anxiety, and you know what? I've never had anxiety before, but since COVID's come about, and I'm a very strong, confident female, and I've never had to worry about what anxiety looks like. And I've been used to coaching and mentoring all of the women within my business and friends and family. But I'm slowly now finding that anxiety is creeping into how I deal with life, purely because of COVID. It's amazing the effect it has on you.
yeah. So if it affects you, imagine somebody who's already anxious, eh? So it's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even having someone like yourself and your wife and what you're doing with the church, and helping these, males and females coming through to find their gifts, and showing them through music, especially because we're a very musical family. It's actually just giving them the basic understanding of just listen to the lyrics. Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I didn't get the very last part of what you said, but I got the gist of what you were saying. Yeah, your thing was cutting out for some reason. So
No, it's okay. You were talking a lot about, whanaunga, and where we come from. Is that important? Do you feel in a male's life that you need to know your background and your heritage and your culture?
I think it helps give you some form of identity. Even in the Bible, it says that Elijah begot Elisha. And it goes through whakapapa. So I think it does play a part. But in a lot of cases, some people don't know their background and they still do really well in life. But I mean, for me, it always helps me to know where I come from. And it helps me to stay grounded. It's probably not the most humble thing to say, but I've always been a humble person. And I think it comes down to, I know where I come from. I know who I am. I know all the ingredients that's been put together to make me, so, and I think they all have value. And then there's things in my life where I'm happy to just let go and move on. So, yeah, I don't know how it is for everyone, but it definitely helped me.
Yeah, I think as Māori, and especially as Māori who are kingdom Māori, and for those who misconstrue what I'm saying, I'm talking about the kingdom of the Shamai, the kingdom of Ihukarau. And I think having those two right there, because for me and what I believe and where I believe our people actually came from, I actually believe our people came from the Levant, the area of Jordan and Israel and Lebanon and Saudi Arabia. Because if you look at the Phoenicians, like they've got tamoko, and so when I see all the connections, and then I see Pūrākau stories about Maui Tiki Tiki, and then I go to Joshua, and I see him slowing down the sun, praying about it to Yahuwah, praying about it to God, asking him to slow the sun down so that he could keep slaying his enemies in the light, so that none of them could get away. And then the deeper meaning behind that, because a lot of people go, oh, look, God is this genocidal maniac, but he's actually getting rid of beings that were never meant to be in the first place, that were given birth to by copulation of the Watchers, aka fallen angels, with women, which was never meant to happen anyway. They were never part of creation, and so they were actually an abomination to him. And even more so, because, and I'm going to say this, what we're seeing now is a DNA war, because you're seeing, I'm going to say, Botox and for those of you who don't know what Botox is, when we talk about this on this show, it's actually talking about video. And then when we talk about filler, we're talking about vacuum, if you know what I'm saying, if you get my drift. So if you're looking at ancient history and you're looking at the garden and looking at what happened there's obviously a deeper meaning. And if people look at apple and you look at the little bite that's been taken out and they've made it look like a little leaf. So there's obviously deep symbology. The battle that's been going on for millennia, being waged for millennia, and it's a DNA war, and that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing it unravel, where you've got this vacuum that's meant to give birth to transhumanism. And I don't know how many people see that in Revelation, because I'm a Revelation expert, man, and I see the 12th sign being fulfilled in 2017 on Rosh Hashanah on the 23rd of September. You count down 1,260 days from there, and it ends up on the 30th of March this year, and then all of a sudden you see this vacuum being rolled out and all these people being sucked up into it, if you know what I'm saying.
And you know what, Shannon, I'm still learning all of this stuff.
But this is all in prophecy, and yeah, it was going. What's happening now, as you well know, my bro, our king said it. He said to all his modern day kingdom disciples, apostles, whatever you want to call us, as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be at the coming of the Son of Man. And I actually truly believe that we're deep into the last 7 to possibly 14 years, and what we're seeing is a rollout of this stuff. And how is this pertinent to us all? It's the spiritual aspect of stuff.
Yeah. Nah, mean kōrero, bro. Mean kōrero. I'm with you, Jamie. That's not stuff I'm hardcore familiar with as well, but it's always interesting to hear people that are well versed in that stuff. So, I mean, still the same, eh?
It creates a great understanding in terms of thinking outside of the box and and what you're prepared to accept as well. So and this also links back to and for the life of me I can't believe I've gone blank, but so Apidana Nata, what did he obtain? I've just totally forgotten. What's he known for? Yeah.
You go, cuz.
Nah, bro. I'm blank too. I'm happy done a nutter, but I won't be able to rattle it off like you, man. Yeah.
So what he did, what Koroapi did was he basically signed a policy that made it legislature, so it became law, that stopped Māori from living on marae, which ultimately caused the decimation of our people, because it caused our people to stop living at marae, which was the epicenter of Māori culture, and then everybody started flooding to the cities to look for work, and then now you're seeing a reversal of that. You're seeing people flooding back to rural New Zealand, to our iwi, to our hapu, and back to the marae. And am I saying I'm blaming it on Koroapi Nata? No, because obviously he didn't see that coming. He thought he was trying to do right by our people. And like you said before, when you were talking about your dad and your mum and the reasons why our pakeke do things and our kaitiaki do things when we're smaller, they're obviously just trying to do the best that they can do at the time. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't turn out for the best. But it's real positive when we can look back at traumatic situations and actually see the good in it.
Yeah. And then we talked about before with finding out where we're from and our identity. I know for us, we were just talking with the Honourable Tuariki Delamere yesterday or the day before. And, what was really evident in the conversation that we had with him was the importance around, knowing your identity and where you come from. And what that can do for me, and what was really a signature for me, is that if you know where you come from and and I'm talking, a couple of generations, there's an understanding of who's in the family, what they've achieved, knowing that there's achievement that started way back then that is actually now being gifted onto every single generation as it goes by. And what you can then do is actually start looking at, actually, I didn't realise I had a gift through my my mother's father's grandmother's brother, etc., and they had a gift for sports, or they had a gift for music, and you can actually then see how it's filtered through the generations, and that can actually help people to understand if there is a gift, and then what they can do and who to go back to understand how to nurture and bring it forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes heaps of sense. Yeah. I watched a little clip you put on the story for Matua, and it looked really awesome too, your kōrero with him. So,
that fella's up, man. He's a crack up.
He's a character, to say the least, because he's a character. But I mean, when you look at his life and what he's achieved and the things that he's been through, you have to be a special character. I mean, to get into West Point Academy, presidents of the USA have been to that academy. So just not just get into there as a feat in itself, but to actually graduate from there and then come back home and get into Parliament and become a member of cabinet, and he held some really special portfolios. And so I mean, but it's a privilege just to have anybody on the show, because we all, in life, especially now in the modern day Canberra of life, there's different lanes for different people. And so the whole take and the whole kaupapa of this show is to get people from different walks of life so that we can reach out to as many people as we possibly can, because there are so many lanes and so many people out there of different ilks and different backgrounds, different demographics. And so that's why it's so important for us, especially cultured people, so that we can reach out to the world on this platform, because obviously and ultimately that's what YouTube does, is it allows us to reach out to people, and people might be looking for someone like you, and they might like the look of your glasses, the look of your mustache, they might look at like the look of your piano in the back, and it looks like some vinyls up on the wall there. You just don't know what's going to appeal to people and what kind of kōrero is going to appeal to people. And so if we can make a difference and having a menagerie of different people on the show like that, we can connect to people all over the world, and that's what this is about.
Yep, definitely.
Oh, no, it's an honour, guys. It's cool that you're so open-minded about who you're having on board too, which is cool. Just, I don't really spend much time on social media, but I do see a lot of closed-minded people that aren't willing to understand each other and hear each other out, and aren't willing to stay in their lane. So it's just awesome to hear that you guys are trying to connect with as many different kind of people as possible. I was just thinking, imagine the kind of tohu that Matua is going to be passing on to his grandkids, and you know what I mean? So, yeah, I can only imagine what they're going to be like when they become adults, Going to be if he was that good, I'm always a believer that things just get better and better, so
Absolutely.
be cool to see how his grandkids turn out and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Before we wrap it up, I've just got a couple of other questions that I really want to ask you. What is your biggest fear?
I think my biggest fear used to be failure. But I've come to a place where I can maybe embrace it more, because it's probably just a new learning. It's not a failure. It's just another element to my journey, another learning, and another stepping stone, I guess.
What pushes you through that failure to make you get to that point of being able to look and learn? Hindsight.
I actually don't know. It's not like I wake up one day and thought, oh no, failure is all good. but it kind of feels like that at the same time. I think with COVID, it's shown me that, you know, a lot of things haven't gone to plan in the last year or so. And maybe just realizing that, hey, it's okay. And I mean, the whole, our song, The Greatest, kind of came out of that, that space as well. Like, oh, well, I don't have all the answers, but Lord, you do. You obviously know what's going on. And whatever I can't understand, you'll give me understanding soon, you know, so it's just kind of come out of those moments. Now, my biggest fear, I know I have what it takes, but maybe just disappointing my wife and kids might be something. It's pretty cliche, but I'm not really scared of much, sorry, but I like to just go for it, you know, and just whatever happens, happens.
And you'll find too what is possibly your biggest fear is also somebody else's, and living in the moment of how do I actually transition or move forward. So what you've said could resonate with them and help them. Because it's the smallest things that we do that can make a potential difference that we don't actually realise.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. What about you guys? What's your biggest?
Well, mine is getting in trouble with my missus, and I think that's all men's biggest fear is getting in trouble with the missus and ending up in the dog box. You know what I'm talking about, my bro. And then what's coming for me, it's what's coming. It's what Holy Scripture prophesies. It's what Yahuwah's word prophesies. Like we're watching it unfold in front of our eyes. As far as my understanding of Holy Scriptures, and then the signs that are happening in the heavens. Like I've got one happening outside my window. It's been happening since, I don't know if you guys celebrate Hapati, celebrate Shabbat, because I still celebrate the feasts, and the reason I do is because the feasts are God's timeline. That's when He does things on His feasts, and so if you get to know all of those from Leviticus 23, then it changes your mindset in terms of when to look for signs, when they happen. For example, Rosh Hashanah 2016. It also teaches you stuff about in March and September every year. There's special lighting conditions that happen, and on those days, those particular days, it'll either be any one of the days from the 20th of March to the 23rd of March, where the Great Pyramid of Giza shows its 8 sides and not just its 4 sides. And then you go to Revelation 21, and it talks about the New Jerusalem, the city that comes down out of heaven. And then that comes down, and then if you read the dimensions on what that actually consists of, it's actually a pyramid. And then if you go to Isaiah 19:19, it talks about the first altar, the first monument built to God. And then so when you look at the parameters, it's in the middle of Egypt at the border. And so if you know anything about the Great Pyramid of Giza, so if you put 2 and 2 together and then read Hebrews 11, it points to the Great Pyramid of Giza being the first altar, the first monument. People will probably go, this guy's crazy, but if you actually go and do your research, you'll find that it's true.
Yeah. Mean. And how about yours, Jamie?
Mine, you know what? I'm probably like yourself. It may come across cliche, but it is that the years have gone by where it used to be my kids, you know, safety and knowing that they're going to be safe no matter where they are and who they're with. It's evolved actually as time's gone by, because I've slowly started to realise that life is so short that I can't live life under the thumb of fear, so to speak. So the way I look at things now is I live life based on a day-to-day situation, and I'm just going to let it unravel, although different circumstances that have popped up in my life. So a perfect example is my mum got breast cancer twice over. She was diagnosed in 2012, and then it came back last year. So those are the things that I'm constantly reminded as to why I don't want to live my life in fear, because life can be so short, and in an instant, just like that, at the click of your fingers, it could be taken away. So now I'm just trying to be a lot more proactive with doing the regular checkups, because unfortunately breast cancer is throughout my genes and my family, my genealogy, etc. So it's those kinds of things that have motivated me to turn my mindset around to become less fearful but more proactive. Do I still worry? Absolutely, because every time Mum rings me and goes, can you come to an appointment, I'm like, I wonder what's going to happen. So yeah, to answer your question, it's the little things like that that have just changed my mindset around how to view it now, if that helps. And one more thing real quick.
Yep.
Who is your hero, or who did you grow up looking at as a hero in your eyes?
My hero at the moment is definitely my wife. You know, she she's just superwoman. You know, just having the years that we've been connected with each other and everything I've learnt about her. Seeing her with the kids, seeing her with the community, seeing her with whoever, you know. So she's definitely my hero for now. Who was my hero growing up? Well, I mean, I think, there were certain men at different stages of my life that played a massive part in my life, and that I learned heaps from, and that I still, without even thinking about, I still live my life the way that I learnt when I was with them, you know. So, yeah, probably Paiarata and Pau and the Tūranga Meritors and the Rimaha Wiringis and, you know, all the guys back then I learned heaps from. Definitely now, my pastor, John Ferris, is definitely a hero of mine. And probably the most hated man in New Zealand, Apostle Brian Tamaki, is definitely a hero of mine. So yeah, I like to keep it close. Just those are my heroes right now.
And you know what's great about that is that they're your heroes, they're nobody else's.
Yeah.
And that matters, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't really like, I've met some awesome people, like my favorite musician in the world. I met him face to face, Anderson Paak, and got to spend a quick 5 minutes with him, and that was all cool, but they don't really have the same influence as the ones I've mentioned, you know. So.
Inspirational individuals that you've actually been brought up around, you've been able to immerse yourself.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
I mean, I've got a multitude of they all end up happening. Like, my father took my attention and I was asking, what army? No, I'm not with you. When he's actually doing his money and his stuff, he's a potential coach. Dr. Armour, the Australian, multiple Australian teams, multiple symptoms of mental things,
Oh, shucks.
And change the course of life just by the amount of detail that you actually consider. And so I learned it from my papa Ashley Coates. And then like when it comes to arts, I've got an Uncle Heke who's a master carver from Whakarewarewa, was taught by the taiapas. And I think people have different IQs for different things. And so whilst they might not have an IQ for academia, they might have a high IQ for creating whakairo and carving, because it takes immense amounts of detail to do that sort of stuff. And then when my papa's coaching sports, they know what details to isolate and look at. And so you've got a raft of different people who can isolate different details that nobody else can see. And so that's why I call anybody obtuse, because they just have a different skill set and they just have a different view on what they look at and how they read those particular details in their given capacity, and they become masters. Like, for example, we've got Horomona Horo coming on the show on Wednesday, and he's Tonga Puoro. He's the protagonist. He's the tohunga of the world for Tonga Puoro, after being taught by Matua Hirini Melbourne and then Richard Nuns, and he's based here in Hamilton as well. So there's some real crop talent here who are growing in and fulfilling their potentials and growing into tohunga, and it's amazing to be around people like that. And you're actually one of my heroes, bro, for multiple reasons, because I look at the man that you've become, and I look at the family unit that you've brought together, and the way that you raise your children and how you treat your wife. And I know that all comes from scripture. And so when I look at you and your family unit and everything that you're doing, I see the success comes from the hand of Yahuwah, from the hand of God. I see his hand in people's lives. And I know you see his hand in people's lives. I'm always telling Jamie, I see his hand in everything that we do. And I've stopped trying to convince you, because it's pointless. People will either see it or they don't, whether they want to or not. For me, I see his hand in everything, because everything that we touch it just turns to gold.
Yeah.
And so
that's awesome, man. That's a mean kōrero. That's mean kōrero. I didn't know, were you into whakairo, bro? I didn't know you were. Yeah,
I'm actually, like, without sounding arrogant and narcissistic, I'm like an onion. I'm into, like, a lot of people don't know that I was doing underground excursions and looking at going into tunnels with a guy called Michael Tellinger. I don't know if I should mention his name on here, but uncovering, those big sinkholes that are opening up all over the world. They're actually connected to a deep ancient underground network that traverses the whole planet. And in those tunnels, you're finding things like sphinxes and obelisks and altars and all that sort of stuff, and sphinxes made out of gold and pyramids and all that sort of stuff. So for me, I understand the language of the occult, so to speak.
Man, that's another show in itself. I hear about it all the time.
So it's another one of my momentum brushes. And so Jamie, aka StayMe Always, she's come up with this brand called Momentum Brushes, and what that's about is, as we're going through COVID, and ever since the inception of COVID, people have been struggling with mental health, which translates into your emotional well-being as well, and then it affects your spiritual well-being, because you're so focused on other stuff, you're so focused on just trying to be happy. And so the whakaaro momentum brushes came in because Jamie likes to put on her makeup, but it's not just to look good, because it palpates your senses and makes you feel good. And then I started realizing, well, because I've been suffering from depression for almost 20 years, since 2002, and probably before then from childhood trauma. And I think the reason why God gave me the gift of music was actually to heal myself as I was going through it. And we were referring to before, and me and Horomona were talking about it last night, when we were talking to each other on Facebook Messenger, how Tonga Puoro, if played at the right frequency, and if you play 3 different Tonga Puoro and they match in the harmonics, they actually heal. And you know the story about David playing the lyre to King Saul when he was being afflicted by an evil spirit. And I mean, it could go on and on, but I'm just going to stop here, because I think that's enough information for people to digest.
Awesome. That's a beautiful creation, Jamie. Momentum brushes. That's cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, yeah, keep an eye out, and even when you're talking to your people, and like Teasy said, look, at the end of the day, it's just, it doesn't matter how big it is. It doesn't have to be. It can be as small it can be. For example, like I said, just putting your makeup on. It's just do things, physical things that will actually make you feel better, because ultimately it's a moment in time that, you know, would you rather be crying, angry, upset, or happy and actually enjoying life? Because like I said before, life is so short. So, you know, find those small things that make you happy. Momentum brushes.
Awesome. That's good. That's true. That's cool.
Well, look, thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. There's been so many different aspects that you've brought to the table that are absolutely going to help somebody out there that's in that's in a similar situation, or is just trying to find something to make that change. And I've managed to, you know, write down so many different things that you can aid in supporting somebody else. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, because you know, your kōrero and your whakaaro is definitely going to make a change and a difference for someone.
Tōki tūna, kei raro I te maro o ihu karaiti, tēnā rau atu kia koe, nā te mea, kei te hoki ki te hōtaka o StayMe Always, the healing well, mauri oro.
Mauri oro. Ka te whanau.
E kona.